competitions come in different shapes and sizes, and I guess we're trying to consider here not only what competitions are, but if you're looking at this from kind of like an event management perspective, why would you choose certain competition structures over others? And I'm going to make an assumption that you've got like a working understanding of some of the terms I want to use here. Oh goodness me, I got a sneeze. Let's see if I can hold on to that. It may well emerge shortly. In fact, hang on a second. Let's keep going, see what happens. So thank goodness for that. Hey kids. So in terms of the types of competitions, I really want to talk to you about 1, I want to talk to you about 2, and I want to talk to you about 3 forms of competition. So with competition type 1, I want to talk to you about this thing called a knockout, which, let's be honest, it sounds absolutely brutal and horrible, but of course is not. A knockout competition is when you play a series of games in rounds, okay? So our competition is based in rounds. I'm going to put that in inverted commas. And in each round, one team or one participant is either in or out. In other words, they win or they lose. Now, I just want to sort of stress this to you. If we've got, let me use my circle tool for this. Hang on a second. That's not what I meant to do. I pressed the wrong button. Let me use my kind of circle tool for this. I'll make this way smaller. Let's imagine that each of these dots represents a team. Okay. Let me make it like that, but a bit smaller. So here's team 1. Here's team 2. Here's team 3. And here, let's say, is team 4. I mean, I'm assuming it's rugby or hockey or netball or football or something like that. Now, the way this works, we've got 4 teams in our knockout. Now, the way this would work is that, let's say, for argument's sake, these 2 teams are going to play each other. Okay, so they're going to play. The orange team and the green team is going to play. And what we get is that the green team wins this game. So let's make a little example of our green team. Copy, paste. Let's get our green team and let's move it over there. And look, our green team is the team that came through and it won. Now, between our reds and our blues, they also played a game. And our reds and our blues played. And let's say, for argument's sake, let's say that the reds won. Okay, so let's select our red, copy, paste. And our red goes through and we go here. And that red team works like that. And of course, what we're going to do now is this team's going to play against this team. Okay, and let's imagine that, I don't know, I quite like the colour red. So let's imagine that the reds win. And the reds win. Let's copy, paste. They are effectively the winners. Okay, whoops, I copied something incorrectly there. Hang on a second. Let me do this far better than I just did. That was absolutely rubbish. Let me copy my red, copy, paste. And let's see if we can drag that work better. There we go. So let's just assess what we've done here. I've only got 4 teams here, but effectively what we've got here is we had round 1, we had round 2, and then we had winner, right? And from here we find that we have 1 winner and that only 1 team can be that winner. So let's put it in there. We've got 1 winner, and we've also got if we put it this way, we've got a very obvious outcome. And what I mean by that is very obvious outcome. What I mean by that is it's clear that this team has won because of the 4 teams that enter the competition. They are the one effectively left standing at the end. Now, this is a really interesting structure in knockout competition. Why? Because these are some of the advantages of it. So if I say plus is an advantage here, it's simple. We can set it up nice and easily, and it's also quick. It's something that does not need to necessarily take months to set up, months to go through the process. We therefore can describe this as efficient. Okay, so this is an efficient there's an I in there, by the way. This is an efficient competition format. And as we've said before, we've got a clear winner. So all of those seem to be wonderful examples of why I might do this. However, there are drawbacks. We get, if I do negatives, we get limited participation. Bear with me. Gordon Bennett, I'm having an absolute nightmare here. Limited participation. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, if we go back up here and we address our blue circle here, let's address our orange circle. They get one single opportunity and then they are out, done. They're not back in until presumably the following year, whenever this tournament's run again. So there's limited participation by a majority of teams or individuals. And if we say here that lots of teams get one game, or let's say competition, one game only for some. And by the way, start to think about, it's not just for some, it's for 50%. Assuming everyone comes in at the start point at round one, 50% of the participants get one competition only. And of course, that's a bit of a problem. Now, the final thing is that we need to have numbers, or we need to go from the sequence of 2 teams, 4 teams, 8 teams, 16 teams, 32 teams, 64 teams, 1 to 8 teams. And I'll stop there because my maths will fail me. This is the format we need to use. Otherwise, we get byes or people that are going through rounds accidentally. Why? Because if we go in this direction, we ultimately get down to one winner, which is what we want. Now, that's a knockout competition. I said here that we have this pink example. What's this? Well, we could use a league. Okay, so a league. What's a league? I'm sure you know. So the key principles are that all play all. You know, whether it's home and away, whether it's a team sport or individual, I'm not going to get into that. Teams earn points. And typically there will be points for different things, a win and a draw, for example. There are also bonus points in some sports. Rugby is a good example of that, depending on how many points a losing team wins or how many tries are scored to encourage excitement. And we can also say that a league, typically, there are exceptions, is season-based. So it's the entirety of a season, okay? And we know how a league works. Everyone plays everyone. It ends up in a big table. The one at the top of that table with the most points typically is the winner. So what are the advantages of this? Well, first of all, it's representative. Now, this actually leads to a potential restriction for knockouts. Representative, what that means is that here we should find that the best team genuinely does win that, okay? Because over a long period of time, there's lots of things that can change. It increases participation, and I've put an up arrow to say increased participation, but the other thing I'd say here is that it's equal participation. And why? Because you play all opponents, okay? You play all opponents. Now, those are some of the positives of our league structure. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to give some of the negatives. So on the negative side, it tends to be long. It takes a long time. On the negative side, it tends to require a lot of administration, organisation, fixtures, officials such as referees, logging of results, keeping the table up to date, etc., etc. It takes more work on that basis. So finally, guys, we're going to have a look at, I think it was this colour I used. Let's try that one. Finally, we're going to have a look at what's called a ladder. I don't think it was that colour, was it? And I wonder if ladder is the one that you know least well. Okay, so a ladder. A ladder is what we call a level-based competition. Level-based competition. In other words, you tend to play against performers or compete with performers who are of a similar level to you. Interestingly, a ladder is endless. It never actually ends unless someone chooses there's an arbitrary endpoint. And it is what we would call, it's really valuable in things like racket sports, especially at clubs, so badminton clubs, tennis clubs, table tennis clubs, they'll use this a lot. And just to make you aware of what happens, you'll tend to have a bunch, these are all players' names here, you'll have a bunch of players' names, and of course, you're going to have them in a ladder structure, such as 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, depending on the rules of the ladder, it could be that player 6 is allowed to challenge a player up to 3 places above them. So, for example, this player could challenge this player and they then compete. And basically, I mean, there are different structures and rules for ladders, but it could be that if number 6 loses, he or she remains in position 6. Let's imagine this name is Kathy Gibbons. Kathy Gibbons, where's that come from? Kathy Gibbons. If she lost against, oh my God, what was going to come out here? If she lost against Rupert Reynolds, good alliteration, James, with an O, Reynolds. Let me just go over. If she lost against Rupert Reynolds, okay, what would happen is that Kathy Gibbons here, she would stay in position 6. But let's say that Kathy won against Rupert. Well, what would happen is that Rupert would move down to here and Kathy would move up to here, okay? So you get this notion of a ladder-based, challenge-based rules whereby you can challenge up within certain guidelines people who are above you, and you can try and change that, take their space on the ladder. And once Rupert was down here, of course, it would be Rupert's job to maybe challenge this player or challenge this player. What Rupert couldn't do, and the way I've set it up, is Rupert couldn't challenge this one because he's 5 places afar. Now, there are different competition structures. I've just happened to have chosen that one. Now, with the advantages of this, guys, with the advantages of this, it means that more often players are playing at the appropriate level. Okay, the appropriate level. That's a really nice one to think about. It also means there's lots of participation. So people are playing all the time, challenging all the time. And it's something where you'll get to this idea where you effectively you'll always be targeting one team or one person above you that you want to sort of replace at some point, and you're building up to hopefully try and compete with them at some point. The other point is it's self-run. It doesn't require any kind of administration other than good communication. The negatives are that it is not good for events. So you guys may well not operate this if you're running an event because it doesn't lead to kind of an outcome. And that's my last point on this. There's no clear winner, okay? There's no clear winner. Unless you decide the ladder is ending next Tuesday at 4 p.m. or something like that, there's no clear winner. And some people deem that to be less valuable because you don't have it. Now, my final things for today, and I don't know if you're going to get credit for talking about this, but I thought I wanted just to mention it because I think it's worth considering. Think about environments where you've experienced hybrid models. That could be where a competition starts as a league and then it moves into a knockout. A great example of that is something like a World Cup. And that World Cup could be football, it could be rugby, it could be hockey, it could be netball. But the World Cup will typically operate as a league in the first phase and then a knockout after that. Why? To give more opportunity for participation. Of course, therefore, if fans have travelled to watch games in a far-flung place, it becomes relevant. Also, bear in mind that another hybrid model is something like the Olympics. The Olympics has leagues contained, it has knockouts contained, it has all kinds of competition structures. But a hybrid would be where you take, for example, a league and then you combine it with, for example, a knockout that it follows, and we call those hybrid events. Thanks.